What happens if you bought a house or a property investment in the last few years and now you're watching the property market crash? Well, I've spent the last 10 plus years building one of the biggest home buying brands in the country, as well as my own personal property portfolio. And in this video, I'm going to share why I'm not worried for a moment about the market dropping, but importantly, why I am worried about it financially hurting families and investors. I'll keep this brief. The reason prices dropping don't bother me is property is one of the best performing assets since records began in the UK. In one of my previous videos, I share a whole bunch of data on it if house prices double every 10 years, but the short version is house prices have never dropped over a 10-year or even 5-year period since records began. Let me prove it to you. All those headlines that popped up at the beginning of the video saying how house prices have seen the biggest annual drop in 14 years. Well, here is that sharp drop on a graph from the Government Land Registry website. This is the drop those headlines are referring to. You can barely see it as there. It looks flat, but it has in fact dropped marginally. But you know what? Let's look at not the last 12 months, but the last 2 years to be safe. Prices have actually gone up on average 8% over the last 2 years. But to be safe, let's not look at the last 2 years, but the last 5 years. And I hope showing you this makes the point clear that even over the last 5 years, house prices as an average have actually increased 26%. So this should put your mind at ease that even if you look at all the data from when records began, there hasn't been a single 5 or 10-year period house prices have actually dropped. There are, however, 1 or 2 year periods that house prices have dropped, but ultimately prices have always rebounded because there is an ever-growing population and not enough homes being built to cover it. So for example, last year our net migration was 606,000 people. So 606,000 more people coming into the country than leaving. Sadly, people die for a whole host of different reasons, which also totaled around the 600,000 as well. So that cancels out those two numbers. But then there were about 600,000 births in the UK last year. So our population last year increased by about 600,000 people. And how many new homes were built? Just under 205,000 dwellings were built. This shortage of homes being built has been not just the case last year, but for years and years and decades. And this problem has compounded and compounded, which is directly linking to house price growth. Another reason I'm not particularly worried is owning property is getting tougher, not easier for everyone. It's getting tougher for first-time buyers, for investors, for everyone because of the ever-growing deposits that are needed, and now far higher interest rates. It is generally far harder to buy a property than to keep it. So if you're on the housing ladder now or have property investments now, you're already at a huge advantage against those that haven't. About 35% of homes in the UK are actually rented. If I could go back in time and buy more property, I would. And I think I'll say the same thing 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because there is a natural advantage that the sooner you start investing in anything, but in particular property, the better advantage you've got. So I've talked a lot about why I'm not worried about house prices, but what I'm worried about is the increase in interest rates forcing people to sell. In reality, if you're an investor, you should be passing your increased mortgage costs onto your tenants, which is why rents have been increasing at a record rate. If you haven't increased your rents and you're finding your profits have reduced or disappeared, then that's probably why. But for those whose homes aren't producing income because they live in them, that increase in interest rates is coming out their pockets. So mortgage rates going from 1.5% to 6.5%, so a £100,000 mortgage at 1.5% equating to £400 per month would almost increase almost 70% to £675 a month, which for a lot of households can't be managed. It is that squeeze on households that's sadly going to cause a lot of pain for a portion of people out there. On that sad note, I'll see you on the next video.